Hello, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Where's everyone tuning in from? If you wouldn't mind letting us know in the chat. That's always fun. Welcome. I'm in Seattle. Sabrina's in London, I think. Kirkland, New York City. Hello. Put my glasses on, but I'm going to have a weird glare. Sorry, folks. All right, we'll let just a couple more people tune in and then we will get started. Hello from London. Hello. All right, we're going to get started then. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lara Hamilton. I have a cookbook shop here in Seattle called Larder. And normally we do a lot of in-person author talks and cooking classes. And given our current situation, we've taken things to Zoom. And so I appreciate all of you being here today. As you can tell from just sort of seeing where people are tuning in from, one of the really fun things about this is that people can join us from all over the world. And we can also have authors join us from all over the world, like Sabrina Ghayour today. I'm really, really thrilled to welcome her. Been a huge fan of her work ever since her first book, Parwana. We at Larder import a lot of cookbooks, and so even before that had a US release, we were carrying it in the shop and cooking from it and absolutely falling in love with it. And so today we will be talking about her latest book, Simply. It's actually her 5th book, so we'll talk about that. We will also leave time for questions, so please feel free to use the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen on Zoom to ask questions, and that will make it a little bit easier for me to keep track of all of your questions. Of course, the book is available at booklarder.com, and you can support the author talk by purchasing it from us if you are considering buying it. We'd be very grateful. All right, so I am going to ask Sabrina to join us.
That awkward moment where you're like,
hello.
I hope my camera works. Hi.
No, totally. Well, that's what I was saying yesterday. Yeah, welcome. And especially, you know, I have the old-fashioned, the old-fashioned view of like things from across the world being like this very slow, like old phone line sort of scenario. So it's always like a miracle to me when someone actually, magically tunes in. So yeah. Welcome.
I'm here. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me
here. No, we're really, really grateful. I know you've been so busy with the book and all kinds of media and TV and all those things that you do. So thank you so much for taking time to join us, especially.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For you. Well, congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So exciting. It's your 5th book.
I know.
Believe that.
No, I feel like people are sort of like, how do you churn this stuff out? I'm like, oh my God, people think I'm churning this stuff out. Like it's just always done with like so much love, and also just like with this real will to want to put more content out to help people, because I just love cooking. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't, not just my kind of food, but just like every kind of food. I have this real passion for food and flavors from all over the world, from every pocket and region of every country, just curiosity. So I can't help it. I cook, like 3 times a day. If I'm at home,
yeah.
I'm cooking every single meal. So yeah, 5th book.
Yeah, no, and I think that's, well, and I wouldn't necessarily see it as churning so much as like, for those of us who don't have that level of creativity, I think it's a little staggering, where it's like, wow, like, because there's also, I mean, as someone who has enjoyed and cooked from all of your books, there's obviously sort of your Persian heritage running through them, but you come up with so many new ideas and things as well. Tell me how you infuse sort of your travels and things like that, where you get your inspiration for coming up with new dishes.
So for me, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, travel is really a big thing for me, not just necessarily even leaving the country, but it's just sometimes it's going into people's homes. Sometimes it's going into different regions of a country, wherever I may be. And I think it's just listening to people, listening to stories, listening to family, to techniques, to traditions. I'm like a sponge. I was never like that at school to like, just if I wasn't interested in something, I for love nor money, I could never like retain information. But when it comes to food, like you could tell me about your grandma's apple cake and like you'd have my undivided attention because I would just have so many questions and want to know and understand, not to replicate, but just out of I have so much respect for tradition and so much respect for people's passions about keeping these traditions alive. But my food, I don't go out of my way to come up with interesting combinations. I'm quite a natural cook. And also because I'm self-taught, this has given me this unique position to come from, because Persians mostly come from families where somebody, if not everybody, can cook.
Mm-hmm.
So like in my family, nobody cooks.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. So tell me, so how did you teach yourself to cook?
So it got to the point that I'd started to cook by watching TV chefs in our country, in England, when I was, a kid, like in single digits, and it was the early 80s. And we had a Chinese cook called Ken Hom, who's actually American. And we had an Asian cook, an Indian cook called Madhu Jaffrey. And I was just obsessed with watching this. So I learned to cook by just experimenting and, being left alone in the kitchen because nobody else wanted to do it. So my mom was like, go play around. She encouraged me. But then by the time I was in my late teens, I'd had my grandmother's sister could cook. So there was like one person, and I had a taste for all of this food, but nobody was cooking it for me anymore. The older generation were getting older and stepping away. And I was just like, I'm dying to have this stew or this rice, this dish that I love, and like nobody's making it for me. I need to try and make it. Small obstacle, there really weren't any Persian books. And I remember in my 20s, my late 20s, I actually paid for self-published, these very, very small publisher in DC actually, but it was pretty much these books were being self-published with this publisher, and they were really pricey for me to import them and then pay for the book $75 and then pay for the import tax on top. But I just, every time I could afford one, I'd get it and I'd just study it hardcore, and then like speak to people, speak to aunties, go into Persian shops and ask people what their methods were. But I found it really kind of confusing and like, because let's say if you ask people, how do you make apple pie? And they go, well, no, you do this. And then they go, no, we don't do it like this. We do it like this. But with family recipes, you're never going to get one cut and dried recipe for whatever you're making. It doesn't matter what country you're from, it's the same, and everybody will swear that their version is correct. So I was like, okay, this is not helping me. And then couple that with trying to find ingredients in a supermarket, even though I could find stuff in the Persian shop, I had to come up with my own ways. But what happened is it really educated me and armed me how to come up with these recipes as simple as possible, using stuff that was mostly readily available in a grocery store and putting it together and then writing that recipe that was foolproof, completely different method, but got exactly the same result. So all those, grandma tales of you can't do this and you have to do that, you got to do it this way and this is the only way to get that result. I realized what was truth and I realized what wasn't essential anymore. And that's how my recipes came to be.
Right. And so how did your family respond to your tweaks to this sort of traditional methods or ingredients?
I mean, I don't really think they're in a position to comment, seeing as they've never
See, thing is, they wouldn't be eating it at all if it wasn't for you figuring out how to make it.
But mostly gratitude, I think, had a lot to
Yeah.
do with it. And, you know, in my family, let alone technically what my books have achieved, if we separate the two, in my family, I've kept and revived so many
Yeah.
recipes that haven't been made in our house for, you know, not generations, but like best part of 2 to 3 decades. You know, even in Simply, there are recipes that are of my childhood, like sour cherry rice with meatballs, tiny little meatballs. And that to me is my childhood. It took me, you know, some time to perfect the easiest version of that, to say, let's say to people, you can't find sour cherries, use cranberries, dried cranberries. Because
Right.
I wanted England and also over the pond, you guys to be able to do it. So what's exactly the same? Has a similar note to, you know, sour cherries, and is sweetened cranberries, dried cranberries. And it worked. And I tested it and I put the easiest version of it down. So I think essentially I've been cooking in the house since I was 5 or 6. I took over when I was about 10 or 11 and became the house cook.
Wow.
And I loved it. It was no
Yeah.
chore. And I would probably, even if I was told no, I would have fought to be that role in the house. So it wasn't sort of child labor or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I just have a passion for it, and I find it very easy to do little things. So it's like cooking stresses some people out. If I'm left to my devices, I'm in my element. I love it.
Yeah. But when it came time to sort of choose a career, you didn't immediately go to cooking.
No,
You pursued
you know,
marketing, I think, right?
so I am a real mixed bag of accomplishments. So I didn't, much to the shame of my family, I didn't finish a college education. I struck out, probably one of the first in my family, and you know, decided that I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, which was, I didn't really have a plan, but I was a headstrong late teens, as you know, we've all been that person one time in our lives.
Absolutely.
And I just kind of floated from place to place until I landed in hospitality. And I started working in hotels. I was a telephone operator, was my first job. And I just wanted to sit down for a living because I'd worked in retail and I was just always on my feet. And I was like,
Yeah.
I just want to sit down at a desk. Like, that's my number one requirement. But I moved around hotels and hospitality and learned a lot. I pretty much worked in every single department, and then came out of there and worked in, you know, all kinds of different establishments, and veered towards events and marketing initially, and then towards events and marketing. But it was much later in life. I only became a chef at 35. I'm 44 now, and I didn't think it would happen. And if you know, 10 years ago, if you told me, oh yeah, you're going to be a chef, I'd be like, you're nuts. Like, what are you talking
And you
about?
will have
Like,
written 5 cookbooks. So there you go.
yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the funniest things are all those wisdoms that people say. Don't go chasing things, you know, things
Yeah.
will come to you organically. Don't chase things. And we're told to chase our dreams, and, you know, and there's so much disappointment in that sometimes, because you're like, well, I want this and it's not happening. But sometimes just to want something, not exactly know how you're going to get there, and just put your faith in it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you're still hardworking and get your head down, things happen. But it happened to me out of losing my job. I was laid off during the last crisis in,
Right.
you know, 2007, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time it affected my job, it was 2011. I you know, our clients were all losing their jobs, so I was made redundant.
Yeah.
And
And you started with supper clubs. Am I remembering that
yeah.
correctly?
So I started the Thomas Keller tie-in for, I'm sure all of you know who Thomas Keller is. I made a joke on Twitter. I mean, I had been doing like little quiet teaching people cookery classes and occasional catering jobs here and there, but I wasn't in the public eye or on social media really that much. But Thomas Keller was coming to cook in Harrods, and I am the biggest Thomas Keller fan. And I was like, oh my God, I spent the whole year waiting for the announcement, booked the tickets, and then I got made redundant. And then they were like, it's £250 at Harrods. I was
Wow.
like, oh my God, you know, like, I've just lost my job. I mean, I could spend it and go into debt, but that's It's
Yeah, that might be
you know,
extreme.
I was seriously considered it. I was like, is it worth it? It's really worth it, but it's not sensible. And I made a joke and I said, you know, our French laundry is like £250. Maybe I should just do a dinner and call it French Laundrette and charge £2.50. And it just went boom. And it was in all
Wow.
the newspapers, and like I set up a phone line because marketing, I was savvy with the marketing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it just blew up. And I had Thomas Keller's staff calling me up going, I want to see it at that dinner. Can you? And I'm like, no, because you have to call the line like everyone else. And crazy,
You can come to mine if
crazy.
I can come to yours, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, what? Oh, you don't want me at your pop-up? Oh, okay. Um, so it was nuts, and it just created a platform where everybody was like, who is this girl? And I hadn't even done anything yet, because I was just thinking, if this goes wrong, I'm like, you know, I'm going to die a social media death. But it went well. I did it for charity, and just lots of people from the industry just said, we'll be your front of house and we'll come and help you in the kitchen. And farmers were like, we'll give you lamb, and, you know, we'll send you vegetables and all of this stuff. And it just, people just pulled together because they thought it was like a really funny idea.
Yeah, yeah.
So it kind of launched my career. And then after that, people were like, that's great, but like, you know, you should cook Persian food. And I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, you should totally cook Persian food. And I'm like, oh, okay. But I didn't think anyone would like Persian food. And obviously I was like stupid and wrong. So, so it started supper clubs, and then that became catering, and it just became 7 days a week, 17 hours a
Yeah,
day for a long time.
yeah. And then you started writing books and doing television and teaching
Yeah,
classes and
yeah.
all of the things. So I feel like you've sort of carved out a specific niche for yourself in the industry.
Oh, I'd love
And
to say I've carved it out, but it makes me sound like I was actually organized in my journey.
well, but that's still, you took advantage of opportunities when they came along, you know? Like that's
Yeah,
still, there
yeah.
is some intention there.
It was like it was a hurricane of the you know, the best advice somebody ever gave me is learn when to say no. Don't just do everything. You
Yeah.
know, it was trying to keep like, oh, you want me to do something Japanese? Well, actually, I'm Middle Eastern. It's like not being afraid to lose an opportunity, because if you're really trying to show people what you're about, you've got to keep to that track for a while, especially
Yeah.
when you're a small fish. You really need to sort of show people, this is what I do. It's Persian and Middle Eastern and Turkish and North African, but that's my limit. That's what I do. And just get your head down and do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in that sense, yeah, that sense was very carved, and I'm still like that. I still won't do things that are outside my remit, or I can't really connect a part of my culture to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how would you say then this book, I'll hold it up again, fits into sort of what you're doing now and what you've carved out for yourself?
So the thing about Simply is, for me, the content feels very similar to the things I've done in the last, let's say, maybe not so much all of Persiana, but definitely more the other books, because I have a style, and my style is very much some Middle Eastern stuff, some Persian stuff, some North African stuff, and then there's just loads of Sabrina stuff.
Yeah.
So it's things that are kind of inspired by, let's say, for example, baklava is, you know, great sort of Middle Eastern, Greek, you know, many countries have it. It's pastry, usually nuts and a syrup on top. But like I made a baklava savory, and I did it with pork, which is like many different contrasting things that clash with potentially my base culture. But I just thought it works, you know,
And
and I
that's the
like,
Sabrina stuff.
yeah, that, I mean, you know, I'm sure lots of people have done it too. And, you know, I'm not claiming it by any means, but I write recipes that make my ever expanding stomach
Oh,
happy.
no.
I love food. I could never write a recipe that's meh. I could never
Right.
allow that to be published, like a half, you know, yeah, it's nice. No, it has to be like, oh my God, that's so good. I have to feel that way, because I think my audience are not stupid. If I don't feel it, they're not going to feel it. So I
Right.
either have to be able to say, you might not like it because it's not to your taste, but actually I love it and I want
Right.
you to love it. And it has to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I create stuff the way I do is because I'm a home cook. I'm not a restaurant chef with an endless pantry of random ingredients you've never heard of. I have my staple of stuff, and I'm always creating. But with Simply, I felt like it was time to sort of share some of the other stuff that for me are staples, but maybe for you might not be staples. And they could be things like sriracha, they could be things like soy sauce, they could be things like fish sauce. So I don't want to say fusion because it really isn't, but I'm bringing out things that perhaps all of us now can access from grocery stores, only if they really add something that something else won't. You know what I mean? Like, just because there's like a fish sauce chicken wings in there, and it's a harissa and lime chicken wings, but fish sauce seasons it and makes it all umami and delicious and salty and just good. And you wouldn't even know it's in there because it sounds a bit weird, fish sauce, but it's a Thai technique and it's genius. I do things if they're good. I don't care to put a label on it and where it's from, and it'll always feel Middle Eastern for people. But the reason this book was called Simply is because, not because it's my easy book, because all my recipes are easy, but just because it's neither Middle Eastern nor is it Western. It's just simply Sabrina food, and that's always going to be a marriage of Middle Eastern flavors, Western flavors, some British stuff, some, you know, I don't know, Israeli stuff, some Turkish stuff, some North African stuff, because I just love it's full flavored, simple food. Always going to be what I do.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I really do feel like that's been something of maybe the past couple of years, but I think it's really starting to show up in cookbooks in particular this year, is this idea that like a dish doesn't have to just be, as you were just saying, sort of Middle Eastern or Asian or, you know, whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like we have access to these ingredients now that each bring their own thing to a dish. And I think people are feeling freer about mixing them in ways they might not have in the past.
Like, there's a common ingredient that I use, and I know it's becoming a little bit more popularized in certain parts of the States. And obviously I know that your readers are like cookbook savvy and love their food. So harissa is a North African chili paste. Now, when I was explaining that to people before it became super popular here, because it is really popular in all our grocery stores, you know, we have like a regular set of grocery stores and they're up and down the country. So we know we can get this stuff.
Right.
And Harissa are like, oh, people say it's a North African paste, so should I put that in a tagine or something North African? I'm like, it's a chili paste. I put it in stir fries, soups, arrabbiata pasta when I'm missing chili. I just use it as chili. I put it on everything. In everything, I marinate steaks. I put it in rib marinades. I put chicken wings in it. Like, I don't like to send people out to get crazy ingredients that they're perhaps a little bit more unfamiliar with if you're not going to use it right up. I want you to sort of get, you know, if you pick up any one of my books, you would need about 20 jars of harissa for the book. Because
or make it yourself, right?
Yeah, you can make it. I mean, nobody in their right mind makes harissa themselves, but I do get people that always say, oh, I've made my own harissa. I'm thinking, you are good. Even in Morocco, you just go and buy scoops of it in, you know, the local spice shop because it's ready made for you. So, but if you can make it, it's great. If you can, you're like real artisan, dedicated, you know, and I got to respect that, but I'm not making it.
So when you think about, you know, you've got the whole chapter in here of sort of your traditional dishes, your traditional Persian dishes. When you're thinking about those dishes, what are sort of the boundaries for you in terms of bringing in those other flavors, like maybe fish sauce or something like that? Or is there sort of a boundary around those dishes that says, no, I'm going to stay traditional here? Or how do you think about that?
So I've realized over the years it's suicide to call a dish what it is and then not honor its key thing. And I think across the world there's always, especially here, we have real issues with food, specifically cultural misappropriation of food. Like the public, they really don't like that, and I understand that. I think with me, I always pay respect to, no matter where the recipe comes from. I would never claim something is what it is. Like, I'm making apple pie, but I'm going to use pears. I mean, it's not apple pie anymore, is
Right,
it?
right.
You know, so I, with my Persian recipes in Simply, actually, they are really spot on. There really aren't that many changes. My changes usually, I don't think, oh, I think it tastes much nicer with this. I want to show you the original deal, because I think that's the part of my heritage I want to show you. I haven't messed around, but in case you can't get sour cherries, use cranberries. That's
Right.
my line when it comes to those things. And I think usually with my books, if I've used the Persian name or the Turkish name or some Arabic name for something, that usually indicates I've tried to keep it exactly how I think it should be, but maybe simplified the process, maybe done a slightly different rice method, for example, or a slightly different method just to make it easier. But essentially, you're 95% of the way usually there to the exact same result. I take great care in respecting culture and heritage and not ruining a dish because I just thought brown food and I need parsley on it. It's really, that kind of stuff upsets me.
Yeah.
Like, people are always trying to put, like, do you think we should put some parsley on your food? I'm like, there's no parsley in it. That just means no, you know?
Right, just for the photo. Let's throw a little green on it.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
To be honest, these days it happens rarely. But every now and again, somebody will say that, and I'll just say, well, no, because food is a privilege. And I know it might not be photogenic, but actually there are so many deep colors in this dish. This is what it is. And like, I don't like that played with. So the only time I'll put something on a dish for something is if it's really in the dish, or it's going to contrast and bring a nice sort of finish to it. So very rarely, I don't just chuck, I refuse, and bless them, my team for producing my books, they know that. So they don't, it's not what they do. They might be like, you know, they might sometimes suggest like, could we sprinkle a little Aleppo pepper on here? And I'm like, yes, oh my God, it's actually part of the recipe. So yes, you can, but it's only for adding flavor. I don't care about appearance, because I care that you can get the same result as me as quick as possible without stressing you out and without you spending a ton of money on unnecessary ingredients. So if I can remove that chili flakes for the top, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
You know, I've got budget in mind. It's expensive right now, and the world is getting slowly more and more expensive as things become, you know, harder for us globally. So I always have economy in mind. I'm not going to be the girl to send you for 50 ingredients for a recipe. It's just not my style.
Yeah. I did just want to, I think that this is the dish you were talking about, the rice with the sour cherries. So you know, in praise of brown food, I just wanted to say that looks absolutely delicious. There was another dish. So this is, again, like, I will say my exposure to Persian cooking is largely through your first book. We would say Persiana here, but I heard you say Persiana. So
no, you can say Persiana as well. Don't you worry.
And I was just like incredibly grateful for your method of doing the tadig, because I had tried it before, and like, of course, like a lot of people ended up with more rice in the pan than actually on the plate. But you also have this recipe, and the idea of like doing that with noodles, I just wanted you to talk a little bit more about this, because I was like, oh my God, that's like, why have I never tried that before? So tell us about that dish.
So this is a dish we call macaroni, basically. But for the book, I've called it tadig macaroni. Tadig just means the crust. Tadig means bottom of the pan, or base of the pan.
Right.
And tadig macaroni because tadig, the crispy stuff, has become quite popular. But this, for Persians, is spaghetti. But it's nothing to do with Italy or any Italian recipes, because essentially what it is, and my ex-partner was Neapolitan, so he would be like, what are you doing to this? I'm like, just shush, we love this. It is completely embedded in our culture. My mom used to eat this when she was a kid, and I think it's because Iranians fantasize about being Italians. And I think this is I think it's something to do with the real sort of revival of Italy post-war in the 50s, and the glamour and the Sophia Loren and all of this kind of stuff, and Claudia Cardinale, and like it became popular in their music and their movies, and that went global. And I think it kind of also affected Iran and embedded this sort of like desire for Italian food. And of course they didn't really have the recipe, so they just made it with whatever they had locally. And it just comes together with like tomato paste and like you know, just the tiniest hint of spice, and just, you know, lamb or beef, whatever you want to use. But it's cult status. It really has cult status. And when I first thought of putting it on social media, I was like, I'm going to test this recipe just to make sure I get a version that's actually written, because I cook off the, you know, I cook all the time at home, but who writes stuff down? And I thought, if I put this picture on there and I don't get annihilated on social media by disgruntled Italians and like confused Western people, then it's a sign, you know, if they like it. And of course people went nuts, and Persian were like, oh my God, this is my grandma when I was a kid, my memories. And, you know, all the Western people were like, oh my God, this looks amazing. What is this? Yeah. And I just politely in brackets put, this is not Italian. We do not use it. You know, it's not made that way. It's not meant to be. This is what Persians do with pasta. And it's just so nice and so comforting. It's just my childhood. It's not saucy or anything. It's, you gotta make it.
No,
you gotta make it.
Amazing. I was like, oh yeah. But I think it's kind of to what we were talking about earlier. It's sort of an example of Persian cooks taking this ingredient that wasn't necessarily theirs to begin with and making it into something that they love. So, you know, it's perfect.
And in some weird twisted history, I discovered that wheat was first discovered in ancient Persia. So actually,
so there you go. It's all come full circle then, basically. Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, gosh, we could spend hours talking about all of that, right? Sort of the ways that food is connected in ways that we don't even think about. And, you know, we're all more similar than we realize. Oh, you talked a little bit in the book about travel, and how, or in the introduction about travel, and how you are someone who, instead of staying in hotels, you like to stay in apartments because you even cook when you travel. And
I really do.
Because someday, hopefully, we will actually be able to travel again.
We will.
Yes, we will. You could share sort of your tips for like, what kinds of gear do you take with you, or what do you look for in an apartment when you are booking those Airbnbs or however you do it?
I was going to say, first of all, I'm Iranian. I don't travel with knives. Like, I could just see the airport drama. You know what? The only thing I take with me is, I'm really particular about two things. One of them is Maldon salt. It's my local salt. I know that it's so trendy all over the States, and I've become one of those nerds that packs Maldon salt. I can't live without it. And everywhere I go, it's like 5 times the price wherever I'm on vacation. They sell it, but it's like, I'm like, why am I paying for it? Let's just, you know, bring some of my stash. And the other thing I can't live without is, it's not a food ingredient, but I have a specific brand of tea called Yorkshire tea I'm obsessed with.
Okay,
So those are the two. If you guys are like looking for a really good British tea, that's the tea to go. So when I look for apartments, I just need a kitchen. It doesn't need to be anything special. I'm not like, I need a Thermomix and a mixer and you know, life's too short. Just go local, find what you need. You know, I have rolled pastry out with old wine bottles. Like, you know, I've really sort of like done whatever I could. We know we had no Parmesan grater. I've chopped Parmesan with a mezzaluna. Like, you know, you just get by. That's half the fun, you know. Like, I don't like to go, right, I've got my aprons and I've got my this. I mean, who lives like that? Right. Go explore the country, find an apartment that has a bit of a kitchen. I mean, most of the time they are nowhere near the complexity of the things I have. Go to Venice, go eat in the food market, go to the fish market, buy whatever is there, come home, get bread, drink wine, you know, like live. That's what I miss, but I'm biding my time. But I just generally, I want to experience and learn and be taught and taste, whether I like it or not, but experience locally. And I think you can't prep for that. Just
Right.
go, open your eyes, open your ears, leave your inhibitions behind, try things, push yourself out of your comfort zone, get some experience that the world has to offer. And you don't have to love it all, but at least you can say, I did that. It wasn't great, but I'm glad I tried it. And
Yeah, yeah. And I
come
do
home and create recipes.
And I do want to remind folks to use the Q&A button and ask questions as you have them. Along those lines, when you're in a country, who do you talk to? Like, who do you find to be like great resources for recipes or restaurants or markets? Like, because the internet can take you so far, but when you get to a place, like, what are your resources? Who do you like to talk to?
I am a terrible person when it comes to things like that. And sometimes work is so back to back and all consuming that I don't even let like air out of the tire until I'm on the plane and I realize, oh my God, I haven't even booked a car to pick us up at the airport. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it just completely escapes me. It depends. Sometimes we all work ourselves into that kind of stupor where you totally forgot something so obvious. But I'd like to say I'm chill, I'm relaxed. I'm not chill. I'm a complete control freak. I'm super, super methodical. I'm just not very organized sometimes. I like to roll with it, but everywhere I go, I'm a bit more of an explorer. So I might listen to, like, sometimes you go, just landed in Thailand or Bangkok, and then people just on social media go, oh, you got to go here. Oh,
Yeah.
you got to go there. So
Mhm.
it's like, you're not really asking for information, but that post will attract people giving you advice and like the kind of help that you want. And then I might just cherry pick the things that you hear repetitively. They say, oh, you've got to go to, like, I don't know, Soul Food Mahanakorn in Bangkok. When I first went, so many people kept saying, you got to go there, you got to go there. And I did. And now it's like one of my favorite restaurants in Bangkok. So it's a combination of a tiny bit of research, but essentially I'm a big, if the city layout is friendly like that, I'm a big go, walk around, see what you find, and then maybe speak to a few people based on posts, people that have commented on posts, and then you kind of get a picture. But I'm not somebody that wants all the food wrecks, so I spend my entire time when I'm on vacation, like going to 90 places all over the city just to eat a cake, it's like, that's too stressful, and it just kind of defeats the point of stumbling to places accidentally and also relaxing. Like, you
Yeah.
need a break. I can't drag my loved ones around because I want to try watermelon ice cream,
Yeah.
somewhere across town that takes 2 hours to get. It's, you have to be a bit
And then you
mindful.
learn
But
an hour to get there and all those things. Yeah.
yeah, but once you eat in a restaurant and then you end up speaking to the chef, and then then he's like, you should really also go to this restaurant, and it becomes like a viral network of ways to discover new places organically, because the chef was telling you, and then you go, where do you eat? And then he goes, well, go here, here. And if you run a really good fish market, you should go here, but I can take you to this vegetable market, and then it just comes together.
Yeah. And so then when you are cooking in your apartment that you've rented, are you cooking like things you've tried in restaurants? Are you making things from home just with different ingredients? Like what kinds of things do you cook then when you get there?
For example, Venice. Fell in love with Venice just last year. Was my first time, actually, and I loved it so much. I went 3 times in 4
Oh,
months.
wow.
I can't explain it. I loved it so much. And the fish is a huge thing in Venice. It's very much part of the culture, but then they're also got this intricate sort of interweaving of spice, a little bit of spice. They use saffron because obviously it was the first trade port in Europe, so it kind of really opened up all this trade and has a slightly more exotic taste than perhaps the rest of Italy in parts. But fish, I was just go and look in the fish markets and see, where is everybody shopping? Where do they not have that much fish left? Who are the biggest fish stands but look like they've sold most of their catch? that's what I'm going. And I'd be like, right, I want clams, I want this, I want that. Oh, I'll have some chili from this stall and I'll go and get this. And, you know, just come together. I like to eat things. I don't like to come up with stuff. I like to eat things just because the produce looks amazing. Like if you go last year in I think it was September, October, it was porcini season. And, you know, everywhere you turned in the markets in Venice, big, fat, gorgeous porcini mushrooms, you know, just grilled them on toast. Like,
oh yeah,
you don't, I mean, you know, so good.
yeah.
So, you know, that it comes together. I don't get creative when I'm on holiday. I might make like all different kinds of things, but it's only when my brain comes back to London or Yorkshire where I live, I just think, you know, that thing I had, that would be really nice, but instead of pork I'll use chicken, and instead of this I'll put that in, and then I'll add some cumin, and maybe instead of pasta I'll put it with rice, and and then I'll do this, and my brain just goes off, and I keep a diary of notes, and you know, that becomes content for my next book.
Yeah. So how has then travel influenced this book? Things that
So much so that cover shot I have a dear American friend of mine that used to live in New York but has now moved to Amsterdam, and I met him in Thailand, and that dish was because I went to his house in Amsterdam. He lives on a beautiful houseboat. And he said, Sabrina, can we just hold off on the dinner that you're going to cook with the ingredients? I've just got this like pork fillet in my freezer and I just need to use it up. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, drag it out in the freezer, Bill. No worries. And I'm thinking, I need to make like a little salsa. Like, what have you got? Pass me one of those apples. Yeah. And some sriracha. And then it comes to life like that, because that kind of pork taco thing is something I make a lot at home. But I do it like with the pickled, sweet pickled onions, and I, you know, grilled pineapple and coriander. So it's kind of more like an al pastor taco, but obviously I'm not trying to recreate something that's already been created. So I use my spices and inspired by that dish. You know, I thought, apple and pork for England, that's a super common combination, but not in this capacity. So it just you know, things just come around like that, and travel is really important. I could probably open the book and go, this was because I had this salad in Singapore, and this was because I had this noodle dish in Beijing, and you know, I can tell you a story like the firecracker prawns in there was based on a prawn dish I had in Porto in the north of Portugal, but I just came and made up my own version because I just liked that it had orange in it and it was spicy. So I was like, I don't know how to make that, but I'm going to make my version and make it sticky. Yeah. So travel is super important for me and shapes a lot of what I do, but you can also travel by looking on Instagram, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask how you're sort of scratching that itch, I guess, at this current moment.
I'm just happy to keep still. I think last year I went to like 16, 17 plus countries, and it was, I love it. It's such a good fortune. It's such a blessing to be able to work. I do work a lot abroad, and then I have my own thirst for travel and discovery as well. But I came back from a month in Thailand and Myanmar, and I came back at the end of January and was supposed to travel again in February and again in March to Tanzania, and I was just pooped, as we say in England, just exhausted. And then obviously this whole nasty thing that we won't mention happened. And, you know, there was that blurry phase when none of us anywhere in the world knew what the heck was happening. And we were just like, but now I'm like, you know what? That hasn't been the worst thing in the world. And thank God we've now seen that book sales, particularly, people have turned to books and rediscovered their love of cooking in many cases. And so it hasn't been so bad. And I can take a chill pill reminding myself that this is only temporary, and yes, it has shaped the world that we're going to experience moving forward, but that the ports will open again and everything will become possible again. Maybe it looks slightly different, but you can't take Venice away from us unless God God forbid it stinks, but you know, you can't take these beautiful places away from us, and we will be able to travel and hold each other and laugh with each other and drink with each other and eat with each other again.
Yeah.
But we do need a little bit of positivity and that kind of light at the end of the tunnel. But for now, we all, in different shapes and guises, we have to knuckle down and do what needs to happen. But you know, that will all come. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm in no rush. I'm going to enjoy the present time, and you know, it's all you can do, really.
Absolutely. We have about 15 minutes left, so I just want to remind folks, if you have a question for Sabrina, make sure you ask it on the Q&A button. So during this sort of lockdown, quote unquote, phase, did you find that your cooking changed at all, or did you just find you had more time to do it?
So I don't know what was happening with you guys across the pond, but I think there was a national wave of people learning to ignore the sell-by dates on like the, you know, like expiry dates, as we call them, on food, store cupboard staples. Like people were, you know, writing to me going, because we couldn't get it, you know, there were queues in the grocery store, shelves were empty, there was a lot of stockpiling here. I don't know what was going on there, but you know, every place probably had similar battles, and there was just nothing there, and people were going, oh my god, I found this like random pack of, I don't know, like dried beans from like 2013. Like, will I die? I'm like, no. I was like, you won't die. And I was like, you know, a lot of things you kind of became open to things like perhaps I had been a bit snobby about, like, oh god, that pasta's a year old, oh, toss that out. Like now I'm like, so what? Like, let's chow down. And it's made me, let's just say it's made me less snobby towards certain products. I also look at things like jams and marmalades, jellies, and I'm using them in dressings and marinades, and you know, adding sort of body to different things that you wouldn't normally think about using them, but vinegars and ketchup. And I've been using ketchup in everything because it has vinegar, it has sugar, it has spice. There's so much goodness to be had from ingredients that we maybe thought were one-dimensional, but like our bad, because a lot of these ingredients, including spices, nothing too crazy, but like garlic granules, my number one used ingredient has been garlic granules or garlic powder. It's just gotten me through. So I think those are the lessons I've learned, and I'm really not wasting anything. Everything gets turned into something, gets turned into something else. So
those store cupboard staples.
And just privilege, you know, you realize most of us, we're fortunate, we're lucky enough to be able to eat 2, maybe 3 meals a day if we can afford it, and that's a real privilege. You know, there are people around the world who in normal times never have that, and it just makes you really realize, you know, we should just stop complaining. You should feel a little bit humble, actually, that you've got even a can of beans in your cupboard. So it's kind of put me in my place. I certainly don't preach that to people. I don't believe in telling people it's not my thing to tell those, you know, relay those messages for people. But it's been an education for myself to really use everything that I had, because it was the first time in my lifetime where we couldn't get certain things. You know, that's a wartime thing or a poverty thing. It's not something we genuinely really experience too much of in our lives, you know, if we're blessed, thank God. But it just made me feel a little bit more humble, and realize I don't need to have all these things all the time. Like salt and pepper is like the best seasoning, you know, most of the time, and it just kind of puts you into check, really, and it's no bad thing. There's a good lesson.
For sure. And did you take on any sort of cooking projects? Were you one of those people who started a sourdough starter, or decided to work on your laminated dough skills or something like that?
No, you mentioned pastry. I'm like, no, that's not my skill set. I think at the beginning, I noticed there was people were really, you know, craving a few simple, like how to put this together. I don't have wheat flour. What can I do?
Right.
And before the videos started coming out hard and fast, I put like a few really simple things based on you having onions, or you having like just onion and spice, or how to make a quick flatbread at home without yeast, and like, or even chickpea flour if you didn't have regular flour, you know,
Right.
those kind of things, because I just wanted to help people. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want to be like, hi, I'm Sabrina, and I'm going to show you how to make this tagine with like 96 different ingredients that you probably don't have at home. And guess what? You probably can't get them because we're on lockdown.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to help people, and I didn't want it to be about me. So I did a few of those, and then I got immersed in just feeling down myself and just feeling shocked about what was happening. And I kind of retreated a bit. But as the summer progressed, I got a little bit of my mojo back, and you know, the book stuff started to start up, and it was good because now we're at a pace where there's work and whatnot, but no real projects. I learned how to film some stuff at home because I'm really bad at that, like super bad. But no, I didn't. I had a cake disaster, but that was about as exciting as it got over the summer.
And did you start working on the next book?
So I need a bit of a break.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, I just, and also work is just suddenly, I don't know what's happened in October, but it's gone bananas, and it seems to be happening for a lot of people like my peers, and I'm really happy for them and happy for me, because you know, we don't have, maybe some of us don't have restaurants, but you know, we all had our incomes wiped out and our work wiped out as our clients wouldn't hire and couldn't hire. So it's nice to be busy, but I'm just going to take it every day as it comes. And I only really put pen to paper for books when I have a solid structure of ideas of stuff I've been cooking at home. So I learned a ton of stuff over lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And I will definitely be in some way kind of paring things down and trying to sort of show them what you can get through simplicity maybe in a next book. So I'm gathering my thoughts, shall we say, but I haven't written anything. So yeah, definitely not, but maybe soon. But I think I'm looking forward to Christmas, and I'm going to enjoy that first.
Yeah. And can you tell us about what you're working on now? Anything
So yeah, I've just been filming nonstop lately. Just lots of different like little shows and like videos for different like supermarkets and stuff.
Okay.
And it's been really, really hectic. But obviously my book in the UK came out in August, and now stateside release and also releases in other countries have come out. So it's nice. It's like the second sort of like wave of promotion and whatnot. And then it's just like there's just a lot of work. A lot of clients have come back, so it's just coming up with new recipes for like magazines and whatnot. And it's nice to have a like little shred of that come back. But you know, things are obviously uncertain here, as I'm sure they are where you are. You just got to carpe diem, seize the day, do what you can, because you don't know how it's going to be in a couple of weeks. So I'm just rolling as much as I can, and we'll see what happens.
Good. So I love to ask authors, especially authors from the UK, just because I'm a huge UK cookbook lover. What are your favorite cookbooks, and who are some of your favorite authors?
I worship at the altar of the queen that is Nigella Lawson.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I just love her. I just really do. I find before I was even in this industry, I always gained confidence from her recipes because they work. They might not be beignets on sugar cages, and you know, she's the kind of food I want to eat at home. And I just know that when I make anything that woman puts in print, works. And I think for me, cooking is about confidence. But recently, and actually very interestingly, my iPad that is doing this call is stacked on a pile of books, cookbooks, of course. I think it's a new release actually, and I'm fairly sure that it's out in the States. It's called Parwana.
Oh, yes, the
yeah.
No, we're doing an event with the author in a few weeks. Yeah. Amazing.
Absolutely loving that. And that I like quirky stuff because I like it, you know, I said I like an education.
Yeah.
So Afghani food, my uncle was Afghani, so I kind of had a little bit of his mom's cooking and a little taste of that kind of stuff growing up. And also it's so steeped in Persian cooking, but it's completely made their own. And then they have Indian sort of influence and Pakistani influences. So I just loved that. And I literally got the book and within a day I cooked something from it, which
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do that very often. I also like a book called Carpathia, which
Yes.
I'm sure is also
Yeah.
yeah, and it's brilliant because again I get such an education. Yeah, I just love books that teach me about a corner of the world that I might maybe love but don't really know how to get that result in recipes. So it's those kind of books that really sort of excite me and do it for me. And yeah, I love Ottolenghi, obviously huge Ottolenghi fan. Love flavor. Just, just so many books have come out this year, and I'm so happy for the ones that, especially the ones that have come out in the last 3 months, because it's not even easier. I think the ones that came out in spring, it must have been so hard for those authors when nobody knew what was happening and what was you know, but I think it's been a good year for books. So
No,
I think there's
definitely.
quite a few exciting releases coming, and I am looking forward to the diversity that hits our shores. And I know you guys are like, thank God we have you, because you guys keep food from lesser known regions, shall we say, alive, and you keep it popular and vibrant, not just through your shop but through your social media. And like, you know, nerds like me are super grateful for that. So thank you,
Really
because
nice.
thank you. I know I'll cry in a minute if I'm not careful.
No, I know.
If I
Oh,
think about
okay.
it too
Trust
hard, but
me.
it's so important, and it's you know, it's not underrated or certainly undervalued by us, because it's really, really important. You have to have people champion these Afghani cuisines, and these cuisines that maybe, if you think about it in the news, it sounds scary, but actually they're wonderful people with wonderful culture.
Absolutely.
Same with Iran, you know, great
Yeah.
culture, great people, so much history, and just great food. The one barrier that gets broken down with everyone in every culture, every religion, is food. We all got to eat.
Yeah.
So it's really, really lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sabrina. That's really kind. And I mean, thank you for creating the books that we all get so excited about, you know, sharing with people. So yeah.
Thank you. I
Um,
got to thank my publisher for that. They largely create
yeah, there we go.
the rest.
Publisher. Thank you so much. This has been such a joy. I'm so glad that we finally got to do this. I think I've harassed you on Instagram a few times about like,
No harassment at
can
all.
I come and
Honestly, I'm
interview you?
so happy.
So I'm so glad we finally got this to work. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Congratulations on the book. Thank you everyone
Thank
for joining
you.
us. And of course you can get it at booklarder.com. And good luck with your projects. And we can't wait to see what's next from you and cook lots from this book.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in as well. That means a lot.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Have a lovely evening, Sabrina. I appreciate your time.
Take care. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.